Backfire.com, the Republican
I
candidate
did
for
not
governor.
have sexual relations with
And I
that woman.
realized that this is something
Miss
he
Lewinsky.
isn't
We're not going to be able to solve our problems if we get distracted by sideshows and carnival barkers.
One Republican, one Democrat, and you discuss the issues that matter in today's local, state, national, and global politics. Hosted by Steve Hickson with co-hosts John Stanberry and Franklin Chansey. This is Backfire.
Well, I'm ready now. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning.
Good morning, John Stanberry.
Hey, guys.
Daniel Brantley. Welcome to another edition of Backfire, everybody. Thanks for tuning in. I just don't know where to start this week. And yeah, we can start with my shirt. I've got this shirt on that's being placed. Everybody's checking me out this morning. McKaysville Gun and Drug Store.
Well, it's drug and gun.
Drug and gun.
Get your priority right.
Well, I'm reading upside down from here. But anyway, it's kind of a unique little drugstore that sells guns in McKaysville, Georgia. It's pretty interesting.
That is a combination you don't see very often.
I don't think you'll see it anywhere else, but
Hardware and hamburgers or something.
soon to be famous T-shirts up there. I can tell you that. So next time I'm up there, I'll get you guys one. Franklin said he'd like to have one. John.
I'm sure he
It's a
would.
neat shirt.
I'm sure he would.
It's a neat shirt.
Let's start out this morning talking about this church shooting. Now, I know the first thing you'd probably want to talk about, Franklin, is maybe limiting the number of shots that a gun can fire.
Whether that's an issue in this case or not, I don't know. I haven't seen any information about that yet. I do think that that's a reasonable thing that we ought to be talking
Well,
about.
the shooter shot
but-
450 rounds in that church.
Well,
See,
first off,
I didn't know that.
why would we traffic in an impossibility?
Well,
We can't limit the number of rounds a gun will fire.
I know that.
So why would we even have a conversation about
I
that?
just thought I'd bring it up, John, to see if I could stir you up a little bit.
I mean, why don't we do Tom Cruise Minority Report? Let's discuss the possibility of preventing crimes before they happen.
Well, that's where I'm going with this conversation.
No, what I mean is like Minority Report. Let's have technology that will look into the future, see who's going to commit a crime, and let's go stop it.
Well, let's talk about what's causing these problems. Okay?
Society is causing these problems.
That's exactly right. But what in society is causing it?
Well, you've got actually.
How about no prayer in school?
Could try to
How
have,
about no prayer in school?
If we could try to have a actual conversations, you could discuss a lot, like you said. We've done it.
Domestic violence.
It's relativism more than anything, because what relativism leads to, it leads to a selfishness on an individual basis. And so people say, I'm upset, I'm mad, I don't care about my life, so I'm going to strike out and hurt a bunch of people just because.
I think it goes all the way back to Hollywood.
Well,
It's the violence that's in the shows. What happened to the great television shows like, Father Knows Best? When we grew up,
but I actually would disagree with you about the violence part of it. It's not the violence, it's it's the context of the violence. When I was 7 years old, Dad took me and my brother to all of the Dirty Harry movies, which were at the time as violent as you could have probably gone to. But the difference is the context was different. The context of those movies was good guy versus bad guy.
Yeah.
Bad guy was going to lose, good guy was going to win. The problem now, especially in these video games and things, is there's either no context or it's a completely amoral context. There's a Nazi zombie hunting first-person shooter game. You can choose to be the Nazi zombie if you want and kill people. The context is the problem. What do kids learn from it?
well, do you think that a lot of this is coming from one-parent families? I bet you, I don't know anything about this shooter, the guy that shot up the church, but I've heard that he was divorced, he beat up his wife, he beat up his kid.
Cracked his child's skull.
Yeah. So, I bet you if you went on back into that guy's whole life, he was probably raised up in a bad setting. I bet you he came from a one-parent or no-parent family. I bet you, he grew up in an era of a lot of violence around him. I don't know that for a fact, but I'm almost assured when you have somebody that goes this far out of bounds, when you look back on the history of them, they've had some bad issues. It's just like this guy in Texas that shot up, in Las Vegas. His dad was a bank robber and was pretty violent when he grew up, I think. So, I don't know. I'm just trying to open up for discussions. Franklin, your opinion?
Well, I think those are all certainly issues for lots of people in this country.
Do you think
Absolutely.
do you think that we ought to try to resolve this issue instead of trying to take guns away from people, which is going to be something that's not going to happen easily?
But nobody's even proposing that.
Oh yeah, the left is always
Actually, Shannon Watts, who was one of the lead, she's what Moms Demand Action, one of the Bloomberg people leading, she immediately put out a completely false narrative. She said that long guns were under no restrictions for purchase in the state of Texas at all. Now, Alyssa Milano, big Hollywood liberal, immediately retweeted that. The problem with it is all these people followed up and tweeted out the federal law that's been in place for decades, which requires those background checks across the country in every state. It was a completely untrue statement, but it got hundreds of thousands of retweets, and so you've got people out there that actually think in Texas you can buy an AR-15 with no background check.
Look.
Franklin, did you look up Shannon Watts?
Let me finish. Let me just say something, okay? Here's what happens. Yeah, they're going to people on the left who want to take an extremist positions.
She's a
Then
leader.
you're going to get John, who's going to take an extremist position on the right.
What extremist position
Let
did
me
I
finish.
take?
Let me finish. And then there's the rest of us out here who could easily come up with some reasonable steps to make this harder to happen.
All right, what
We
step?
can't stop everything that happens. Nobody suggests we can stop everything that happens, but we can lessen the risk of it happening.
By what? Tell us.
First of all, clearly, as John's going to point out, the background check system had a flaw in it this time.
Well, the Air Force didn't report
What
it.
was
That's
the
right.
flaw?
That's the flaw.
No, that's not. But what is the actual flaw? If you boil that down, what is it?
He wasn't eligible to purchase the gun that he purchased.
But the flaw is government incompetence. So giving more power to the government who is incompetent to enforce the existing law.
And the alternative you offer is do nothing.
No, the alternative I offer is to find who did that in the Air Force. By the way, did you know, I've got it here. I'll
Yes,
pull it out.
the military
Air
is...
Force has transferred 0 convictions into the NCIS system.
That's a flaw.
That's
It needs
not
to
a
be
flaw.
addressed.
That's incompetence.
It
Go
needs
in
to be
there,
addressed.
Fire some of those people.
Yes, agreed. Agreed.
Well, then don't waste our time talking about how to add to the NCIS laws when we can't get the incompetent government to enforce the existing NCIS laws.
Well, let's talk about other things that can be done to help the problem. We have a problem, John. Gun violence is a problem.
Actually,
Now,
if you
there's
really want to get into
a
that,
problem with the
statistically-
people that are doing it. It's the people that are doing it that's the problem. How can we help stop those people from doing it?
Well, first off, you've got multiple confluences of issues here.
Sure.
The progressive left, all through the 70s, made us turn out all of the insane asylum patients who had been actually locked away because they were criminally insane or they were unstable emotionally. And we closed all of our mental hospitals. We quit forcibly incarcerating any of these people. So guess where they're at? They're walking the streets with you and your mother and your child and your cousins. And they have access to these guns because the same liberal progressives said it was wrong to stigmatize them with these labels. Well, guess what? If you don't have a stigmatizing label, you don't have anything to vet in the NCIS system. Now, ask Franklin on a civil right, and I'm not really fussing because it is a balance that you have to try to strike. But where do you draw that line between this person's been accused or this person, his family members have said, oh, he's got mental instability? Where do you draw the line when you start taking away his constitutional rights?
You give a reasonable appellate administrative review process that somebody can go through to make sure that due process is afforded. It can be done.
Now, this shooter
shooter
drove 35 miles to go to this church.
Which is the distance from Chattanooga to Cleveland.
Because his ex father-in-law, in-law, and mother-in-law sometimes went to church there. So he wanted to go in that church and do this
Well,
shooting.
he also escaped from a mental institution, we now know. He was incarcerated through the military in a mental institute. He escaped from that. He tried to smuggle guns onto the base. He made violent threats against his superiors.
How was this guy?
Well, that's
loose?
the point, though. Dylan Roof over in South Carolina, same set of circumstances. All of these people, the guy at the Virginia Tech shooting, same set of circumstances. It's a failure of the system to enforce current standards. The standards aren't the problem.
Well, first of all, what we don't have is any kind of universal system relative to mental health type issues like John just talked about. That's a starting point.
See, I think some of this stuff starts at birth, though. I swear, I think it starts at
Franklin
birth.
is going right back to what I said a minute ago. We did have a system, and the liberal progressives dismantled it.
Well,
Look,
Did you all dismantle the mental health system that used to actually put these people away? Now, don't get me wrong, were there abuses? Probably so.
oh, it's a lot more complicated than you want to make it
I didn't
out
say
there.
it wasn't complicated.
For example, funding for mental health institutions was stripped way back during all of the Republican administrations in Tennessee,
Well,
for
funding
example.
was really stripped back when you closed all the institutions and dumped all those people out on the streets.
That's not what happened here, John. I don't know what state you're talking about.
I'm
but
talking
it's
about
not here.
nationwide.
Well, I'm
the
talking
liberal
about Tennessee
progressive
right now.
Closed down all the mental health institutes
Well,
and said it was
let's not-
wrong to incarcerate.
let's not stay on mental health institutes. Let's talk about the wide range of this problem and what can we do as citizens to help curb this from happening anymore in the future.
One
What
of the
do we
ways you
need to
can-
do?
The evil AR-15 that this guy used to shoot was stopped by a NRA member with an AR-15.
Well, I'm fine. That's okay. And I'm not saying take anything
You know what
away.
his
But
quote was?
What
I
is
wish I'd
causing
gotten
this-
there earlier.
Well, I wish he had too. What is causing an idiot like this to walk
He's not
into
an
a church?
idiot.
He is an idiot.
He's not an idiot.
He's crazy.
He's crazy.
Is
but
that
that's
not an idiot?
No, that's
Okay.
not an idiot.
Crazy idiots. What I
Here's the
call
problem. You have built a culture of selfishness and of,
and it starts in Hollywood.
Last week, I brought in a tweet from Planned Parenthood that
Yeah,
black
oh.
mothers should abort their child because that was safer than having the child. It's that kind of disregard for life that leads to all of this.
Let's take a call.
When you take a kid when it's born and you're mean to it, you lock it up, you hit it in the face, you twist its arm, and you're mean to it, don't have a mother and daddy that's normal, and they're mean to a kid, it messes with their brain. I'm talking about from 0 to...
That's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to go back to the start of these problems.
All right, well, let me give you an example.
What can we do to make the world a better place to live in?
The caller's right, but here's a
Thank
good
you,
example
caller.
of that. You get a mother who can't get off of meth for the 10 months that she's carrying a child. She delivers that child, and then we allow her to have parental rights for the next 4 or 5 years. That child ought to be born, and the minute she's born, or he's born, they ought to terminate parental rights, adopt that child out to a family that will love it, and tell that mother, if you straighten your life out, have at it. You can raise your next child the way you want to, but you are not going to continue to come in and out of this child's life.
What do you think, Franklin?
Well, I think it's somewhat ironic that John would be very quick to take someone's child, but as long as you don't take their gun.
Now, see what he's doing there?
No, I just think, I think that's...
I know, but
no,
Franklin,
no, hold
we're
on a minute.
discussing the
No,
fact
I
that
am.
these kids
I
grow
am.
up damaged and abused, and your first thing is to compare it to taking a gun away.
No, my point is that the reason we can't have a conversation is because of that extremity.
What's extreme
of
about that?
thought. It's not that. It's
How is
not
that
that
an
there
extreme?
aren't people whose children shouldn't be taken away from them. There are. In fact, that happens. It happens a lot.
Very, very rarely, I would say.
Not only are they, but here's the
No,
problem, Franklin.
I
I
wouldn't
didn't
say
say
that at
take it
all.
away. Listen,
Come
I
down to
didn't,
my office for
I
a
didn't
while.
say
You'll see
take
a
it
lot of
away.
them.
I said terminate her rights. The problem
That
is
happens too a
the
lot.
problem is when they take them away, The mothers have all of these rights to come in and out of the child's life. They even have a lot of cases where an adoptive family loves a child and the parent, mother or father now, will come back and basically extort them for money. They'll say, you know what, I'm going to go file to get my rights back unless you give me $1,000 or you give me this.
Well,
that should be stopped. Their rights should be terminated because the best interest of that child ought to be primary.
I want to not get stuck in one spot.
That's where you wanted to go.
No,
this starts
John,
at that level.
No, I'm trying to cover a lot of territory here, and I don't want to stay in one territory. You know, the kids. I'm saying the kids are a problem. Raising kids without parents are a problem.
Well, you
That's
can't
one of the
spank a
problems.
child in school. All four of us
That's right.
got spanked in school. I got Mr. Farr spanked me with a paddle with holes drilled in it. I was not psychologically damaged.
The teachers used to brag about their paddles.
Absolutely. Well, you have children in school now that tell the teacher what they can and can't do. My mom will sue you if you touch me.
Mm-hmm. That's part of the problem.
Well, a child that'll tell a parent
Is there too many lawsuits?
Absolutely. Schools are terrified they're going to get sued.
I know everybody's going to look at me and laugh, but I just look at Tennessee compared to a lot of other states, and we have dramatically fewer. But John says this
fewer what?
Lawsuits.
But here's the problem with that. That's a relative argument, which I mentioned relativism earlier.
Okay.
Here's the problem. Compared to Charles Manson, I'm a wonderful guy.
Well,
If there's too many lawsuits across the country, the fact that we're one of the better states doesn't mean we're good.
All right, let me ask Franklin something specific. Do you think that we need to regulate what comes out of Hollywood a little more? Would that help what's coming out of Hollywood?
I don't know how you could do that.
I don't know how you could do it either.
They used to have ratings, and they weren't allowed to do it.
Well, they have ratings now.
Yeah, but if you look at the ratings, what gets an R rating now would have gotten an X rating in the 70s.
I mean, it is true that what we'll call contemporary standards have changed, and what people consider to be R-rated and so forth have changed. And
You know
somebody said something at a lunch meeting yesterday I was having that was interesting to me. I never had thought about this way. Years ago, if you think about this, TV was free, okay? And if you wanted porn, you paid for it. Now then,
you pay for TV.
Now then, you pay for TV and the porn's free. I mean, think about that.
Here's the really hard answer.
I'm not watering down anything that John said, okay? And I really mean this sincerely. I'm not just arguing about it. I'm not sure what the answer is. When you compare America to other industrialized countries, okay? I'm not just talking about guns here. We have more violent murders.
That's actually not true.
Than other industrialized
That's actually not true.
It is true.
The violent crime rate in Great Britain is actually higher. They don't use guns, but the violent crime rate is actually higher.
The difference is here, you're a lot more likely to die in that violent.
Well, that's not what you said.
No, well,
you said violent crime. Violent crime is actually lower here than it is in most of the European countries, except it doesn't involve guns in those countries.
For example, the robbery rate is the same in Great Britain as it is here. But you're 5 times more likely to die in the robbery here than there.
Well, so is the criminal more likely to die in a robbery here.
You're liable to just get shot here. I mean,
in Chicago,
Okay.
that's the leading cause of death, which Chicago, by the way, as the president pointed out, has the strongest gun control laws of the country.
But in Chicago, they're not shooting because of crime. They're just shooting because of gangs, shooting at gangs, aren't they?
Look, you can't remove morality from a culture and not have an impact. The progressives have spent 40 or 50 years attacking any forms of morality and ethics, and this is what you got.
Let me ask you something. I know President Trump has gone after this what's that?
MS-13.
MS-13 in a big way. Could you not, in Chicago, go after gangs and probably
you didn't have Rahm Emanuel as the
just put a stop
mayor.
to them? I mean, that's probably the biggest problem they've got. Is gang related there, right?
I imagine, but
and those are coming from families, bad neighborhoods with families.
I will. This will be interesting because I will give Franklin's side of the argument a lot of nuanced credit here. Again, all of this is a balance. I would love to see the police. You know, I love the Dirty Harry movie where the the cop goes in and he knows who's bad and he just punishes that person, and other people see that and go, gosh, I don't want to be the bad guy. The problem is you can't really do that. You can't go in there and say, we're just going to shoot the damn gang members, because some of them are gang members because they're really black-hearted people. Some of them are gang members because if they're not, the gangs will kill them.
That's right. They're being forced to be in gangs. A lot of them from the neighborhood they live in.
Here's the problem. Right now, we're talking about sentencing reform. So at the same time, we're saying we have to bring some punishment to bear on the gangs. We're also saying, we can't incarcerate all these people. Well, again, that's part of that nuanced balance.
Well, we're probably saying that where we've drawn the line in terms of what we incarcerate people for is not drawn in the right place. Should people who commit violent acts be incarcerated? Absolutely.
Should they be incarcerated?
Not going to get much disagreement.
Well, but here's something we might agree or disagree on.
But if you're asking me, should we incarcerate everybody who managed to get hooked on a drug? No. I think we ought to be trying to find treatment.
Here's a question for you. I'll ask you this one. Should we incarcerate those violent people in a Brushy Mountain State Penitentiary type place where they're busting rocks all day, or should we make sure they have a soft serve ice cream machine and HBO cable in their cell?
Well, there was a wonderful story on 60 Minutes a few weeks ago about a prison in California that was the leading ultimate max prison all through the 70s and 80s. They put the worst of their worst there. They stayed in solitary confinement 23 and a half hours a day. They ate in their rooms. They got 30 minutes a day in a room that was bare concrete walls but didn't happen to have a roof on it. So that was the sunshine they got for that. And after 20 years of doing that, they discovered that what they did was create ultimate monsters. They were even worse.
They were ultimate monsters when they went in.
No, they were worse. John. And even the warden of that prison said it's the worst thing I've ever been involved with, and I was a big believer in it. It was a horrible mistake. We ought to be trying, even the worst of people, to make them into better people when they come out.
Some people are just broken, and you're not going to make them
You don't
better.
find that out till you try to make them better, though, do you?
Well, how do you do that? You turn them loose?
Well, maybe
that's what we've done.
You give
we've
them
turned
job
them
training.
loose. And we've turned them loose, and then they've recommitted more crimes against more people.
But again, we're not talking about whether we should release violent criminals
ought to be
early.
an unpleasant place
Well,
that you don't want to go to.
I wanted to talk about these shootings and what's leading up to causing these shootings, and I think
did you know
their
that
way
Bill
of
Gates,
life. I'm going
Well, 3 of the 5 largest mass shootings in American history have occurred in the last 14 months.
Let me
so,
discuss.
there is something going on.
Did you know that Bill Gates and who's the other? Steve Jobs both limited the screen time that their children were allowed to be on the devices that they actually invented. These kids today grow up on these devices.
They're addicted to them.
But the problem is they have no socialization.
That's right.
They're not out. They're not playing with other kids. They're not learning problem solving. They're not learning how to get along with other kids. So you've created a non-social, and then on top of that, they're not going to church where they're being taught any values or ethics, and then on top of that, they're not getting any values or ethics taught in schools. What do you expect?
Well, that's where I'm trying to take this conversation this morning, is that the values start in the home, and then it goes through the school. And what do we have to do to, if kids are going to be born into this world, how do we teach them better values than they're being taught today?
I don't think you can in the secular culture that we've created.
Well,
you've got an active movement to destroy church, destroy moral values.
Well, I'm saying as an American, John, and you too, we need to speak up and stop this. Are we still not in control of our lives and what's around us?
Well, you've got a culture on TV, a culture in the movies that puts churches down.
I say we go back to a rating system. Let's start
the problem with
Hollywood.
the rating system. I'm not against the rating system.
Hollywood is sick.
But here's the problem with it. I'll give you a good example. There was a movie long time ago called Doc Hollywood, Michael J. Fox.
We had him on radio here for a while.
Cute little movie. And this is actually, I'm stealing this from Michael Medved, who wrote a book, Hollywood versus America. If any of you all saw that movie, it's a cute movie about him getting stranded in rural South Carolina town, and he walks all over the town. Do you know what you don't see on the courthouse square of the town? A church. There's not a single church on the courthouse square. He walks his pet pig around the courthouse multiple times. There's no church on the courthouse square. Find me a small southern town that doesn't have 2 or 3 or 4 churches on the courthouse square. Now, that is a point, not that those people were actually trying to put church down, but when Hollywood sat down to make the typical small southern town, it never entered their mind to put a church on the courthouse square because Hollywood doesn't go to church. They don't have the same values we have, so they're never going to portray it.
Then why don't we do something about it?
Well, you've got people. Kirk Cameron down in Georgia, there's a church down there that has produced most of these religious movies that have actually done quite well in the box office as far as profitability because they don't cost that much to make. And the problem is Hollywood has an actual avarice towards that. They had a hard time getting distributors for some of their movies, and especially if the movie takes a controversial stand like pro-life. There's a wonderful movie called October Baby. It's one of the best pro-life movies you'll ever see, but they're all distributed by small distributors, even though they make money. That was actually part of Michael Medved's book. He said they always claim they make R-rated movies because they're profitable. The most profitable movies made are G-rated movies. Most R-rated movies actually lose money. So Hollywood is lying. They make R-rated movies because that's the value they want to push on us.
What do you think, Franklin? Do you think we ought to look at Hollywood as helping some of these things? I think Hollywood creates a lot of violence, too much violence.
Silicon Valley is not part of Hollywood, but they create a lot of this gaming violence.
Mm-hmm. I don't know. We've got to start with the core again.
Well, look, the gaming. Now, my son and I have had this argument. Okay, so it happens everywhere. But I said, look, I think
you don't argue with your son too, do you?
I told him you're playing these first-person shooter games too much. I don't like it. I'm not telling you can't play them, but I think you're playing them too much. Now, this has been a couple of years ago, and he said, "Oh, Dad, they don't have any effect." And I said, "Ian, these games, where do you think they were invented? They were invented." Now, the Hollywood people and the gaming people say that they don't cause you to be more violent. They were invented by the Army to train soldiers how to shoot and kill.
Yeah.
That was actually what they were invented originally to do.
Well, they have soldiers. That's what they do.
But think about that. Now you have, I don't know, maybe hundreds of millions of children day in, day out, hours at a time, practicing shooting, maiming, and killing. That can't be a good thing.
All right.
Well, there is some good news for you.
What?
Well, the last year, the divorce rate actually fell a little bit.
That's true.
First time in 25
That's because they don't get married anymore. They just have kids.
Well, that probably is a little bit of it, too.
I'm not kidding you. It's amazing to me. These kids having kids don't even think about marriage. It's just amazing. And
by the way, I do want to point out that the neighbor that stopped this mass shooting, not only did he have an AR-15 and not only was he an NRA member and an NRA instructor, but he actually recognized that the guy had body armor on and shot precisely where he needed to shoot to stop it. Yeah. So this argument that armed citizens can't make a difference, that's why you haven't heard as much blathering about the NRA in this, because an NRA shooter stopped it. Well, by the way, a deer rifle, my .308 would have stopped it better because where he hit him, the .223 that they keep, the AR-15, they keep saying, oh, it's so powerful.
Yeah.
It went in and hurt him. He dropped his gun, got in his car, and drove off. My .308 would have took his arm off.
Yeah. Question. I'm going to put this towards the end of this segment. We got to take a break, but Bo Bergdahl is walked off the post.
That's exactly what we just finished talking about.
That's
what
why I wanted to
message
bring it
does
up.
that send to our culture? It says no commitment, no dedication, no loyalty, no punishment.
I mean, I can't imagine this guy not getting any time out of this.
He should have been shot on the battlefield.
Well, that in the olden days, that's what would have happened. Franklin, do you think that was a fair sentence?
Well, first of all, I didn't hear the proof there. I've only know what's in the media.
Well, he admitted guilt. He pleaded guilty to doing it.
I do know what the judge was quoted as having said.
What did the judge
That he
say?
took into consideration the fact that he had been held by the Taliban for 5 years.
So?
That was part of it.
That was
his
his
fault.
That's his fault.
Whether it is or not, I'm only telling you what the judge
How about
said.
the quadriplegic?
How about let me just tell you what the judge said.
Go ahead.
He also took into consideration a military intelligence analyst who said that they had gained valuable intelligence from him that had helped them rescue and prevent other soldiers from being captured by the Taliban. That was part of it.
All right.
The third thing he took into consideration was that there was apparently some evidence that I'm not familiar with, but some evidence of him having some long-standing mental health issues before he got into custody. And then the fourth thing that he did mention was that he had to take into account some of the comments that the president
What does
has
that have to do
made
with anything?
that, as John had pointed out previously in other cases, that when the commander-in-chief makes those kinds of comments, it makes it difficult.
Well, Franklin,
Well,
first
I'm
off,
only
all
telling
of the
you
things
what
you
this
did-
The other
judge said.
president brought his parents in, tried to make a hero out of him.
I'm
So what
only
difference
telling
is
you
there?
what the judge
But
said.
Franklin,
That's
where
your
did all
wash.
three of the other things besides the president, where did all three of those come from? They came from defense counsel positions, right?
Yeah,
He didn't
that's the
take
way
into
trials
effect-
work.
He didn't take into effect the quadriplegic who said I'm paralyzed for the rest of my life because I was out
I
looking
don't know if
for
he did
him.
or not.
He didn't.
I
I
do know also that in addition
All
to
he
not getting the
considered-
jail time, though, he did lose an important benefit for
At
somebody
which they
who
are
had, who had.
appealing now.
Well, that doesn't mean that he'll succeed. He is losing access to all of those veterans' benefits,
All right,
and he
Franklin.
has, as I understand it, some significant medical conditions from this confinement that
You mean
will
from
not
his
get to.
actions?
Okay, I'm not arguing with you,
All
John.
right, let me
I'm
go
just
back to
telling
what
you
we
what
were talking.
facts
I know,
are.
but let me go back to what we're talking about. Irregardless of any of those things that Franklin said, what this says is we did not hold him personally responsible for his actions. That's why these little psychopaths end up shooting people, because they've never been spanked, they've never been punished, they've never been held accountable for their actions. That is exactly what we just finished a 30-minute conversation
I
about.
think he would be a prime person to keep an eye on, because he would be the one that could come back in as a shooter later on, I think. He should have been sent to prison. Let's take a break. We'll be right back.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson. We'll be right back after this.
Hello. I'm the doctor.
And you're listening to WOOPLP, Cleveland, Tennessee. WOOP FM is a broadcasting service of the Traditional Music Resource Center, and we play America's original music.
Another SOS, and you're stressing, and that's the time to check in. I check into cash, check in. When you have a cash emergency, check in. We understand the urgency. Check in to get your loans and more. You gotta check in with your check into cash. Walk in, call in, click in, go all in. Check into cash in, check into cash. Your one-stop money shop. Check into cash.
Did you know that U.S. Money Shops cashes all checks, even the ones most check cashers reject? Tax refund checks, government checks, payroll checks, and many more. And when you cash a check with U.S. Money Shops, we'll give you 10% off your next purchase. At U.S. Money Shops, we have everything you need at a fraction of regular retail. So stop by one of our 11 locations or visit us online at usmoneyshops.com.
Buy yourself or apply today. The better way at U.S. Money Shops.
Some restrictions may apply. See store for details.
Attention, Cleveland area creditors. Are you tired of dealing with debtors that owe you money? I'm Jeff Renfro, and I've owned and operated Financial Recovery, a debt recovery specialist here in my hometown of Cleveland for 18 years. We're a licensed and bonded Tennessee collection agency working for a wide variety of creditors from commercial, manufacturing, physicians, dentists, attorneys, small business owners to individuals. Look, any kind of business dealing with billing, charge accounts, or even return checks. I know your past due accounts are not a top priority for you, but they would be to me. Let me try to make it easy for you to make a change in the way you've been handling your accounts. There's no contract and no cost to you in most cases, as our fee of only 30% can be added to the balance owed to you. So, whether you have hundreds of accounts monthly and need help with your billing and collection, or you're just an individual and somebody owes you money, let me help you. Give me a call at 400-5376 and I'll come by and see you. That's 400-5376.
Financial Recovery, a licensed and bonded collection agency in Cleveland, Tennessee. 400-5376.
Yeah, you looking for something sweet? I know you are. Bring your little sweet self to the Village Bake Shop. Around since 1961, there ain't a baked good in the galaxy the Village Bake Shop can't whip up for you. So when you're ready to treat your mouth to a taste you won't soon forget, get over to the Village Bake Shop in the Village Green Town Center. Or give them a call at 476-5179. You dig?
Hello, my name is Andy Figglestaller with Ed Jacobs & Associates. We are an employee benefit and insurance broker in business for the past 20 years. The new healthcare law, also known as Obamacare, has finally arrived. The law is complex and the choices are confusing. You have questions, we have the answers. It is our passion to find cost-effective solutions for every client. The solutions will be different for every person or business. Let our knowledge, experience, and passion go to work for you. Contact us today and let us assist you through this process. Our phone number is 423-473-0202, or you can find us on the web at edjacobs.com.
Why would you put up with a heating and cooling system that cycles on and off when you can have quiet, true comfort, variable speed by Train? It runs at low speeds with continuous little adjustments to keep your home comfortable and quiet. It's always been hard to stop a train. Now, it's hard to hear one.
When you want an unconventionally efficient heating and air unit that keeps your home right in the comfort zone, day in and day out, nothing will do but a Train. To get the best Train service, call your local Train comfort specialist. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. Keeping you comfortable is Mechanical Systems' only business, and they've been providing high-quality service and installation for more than 30 years. Mechanical Systems, 336-5739. That's 336-5739.
It's hard to stop a train.
No dealers allowed.
Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933, offering the best with over 70 styles of recliners, sofas, electronic lift chairs, full living room packages. Call Mike now at 961-7239 because Jackson Catnapper now offers sales to the public
Every Saturday. That's right, every Saturday.
from 8 in the morning to 1 in the afternoon. Or call Mike at 961-7239 or go see him
Every Saturday.
at 1911 King Edward Avenue, just across from the main plant. Jackson Catnapper, family owned and operated in Cleveland since 1933. 961-7239.
No dealers allowed.
You're listening to Backfire with Steve Hickson on Whoop FM. Call 423-614-5553 to join in on the conversation. Now, back to Backfire.
All right, listeners, thanks for listening. Give us a call if you've got anything you want to talk about. But right now, I'm going to talk about...
Tell us what you think. 614-5553.
The congressional leaders are calling for a sexual harassment training.
There's been several female members of Congress that said they've been subject to.
Well, all of a sudden, we're having a rash of people being charged with.
Well, I think you're having a rash of people who've gotten brave enough to say what they've experienced. And most of what I've seen has not struck me as something that I was really surprised about.
I will say that I read a piece written by a woman this week that and I shouldn't actually talk about it because I'll probably end up getting in trouble, but she actually was criticizing Rose McGowan. Now, I'm not. I think she's brave for what she did, but she said the problem was Rose McGowan took $100,000 10 years ago to be quiet about it. Now, I will defend her because she had a career. She, that's the whole problem. But this woman's point was, had she not taken that and accused, been brave and accused him, she would have saved a lot of people. She also probably would have destroyed her life, her career.
Should there be a time limit on being able to charge someone with something like that?
Well, most of these people aren't being charged with anything except
Weinstein's in
public
trouble because
murder.
there's some recent charges coming forward.
Mm-hmm.
Kevin Spacey may be in trouble because of recent charges coming forward.
So there's a lot of people coming out that are stating that it happened 10 years ago.
Well, and there's a lot of stories that are coming out that aren't as extreme as maybe the Weinstein case or the Spacey case, but are just talking about what their experiences have been and the things that have been said to them and the patting them on the rear end and that sort of stuff.
What should be the guidelines for a lawsuit?
What do you mean?
Well, I mean, accusations, is that enough to file a lawsuit?
Well,
Actually,
you
it
can file
is
a lawsuit,
for
sure.
anything.
That isn't. You still have to be able to prove that it's more
Yeah, but the
probable than
problem-
not that it happened.
Look, I'm not necessarily agreeing, but Franklin, especially as a business owner, if the accusation is made, it'll be on the front page of the paper. If it's dismissed as a ridiculous claim, it'll be on page 18. The damage is already done.
It's entirely true that when the newspaper gets it wrong, sometimes the retraction is usually not on the front page.
Well,
of
and
those
on top of
headlines.
that, and look, I have no sympathy whatsoever for a man that abuses his wife or his children. However, that has become an extremely misused tool in child custody cases.
Sure.
Usually on the woman's part, but I think you're going to see some balance in that. You're going to start to see the men accusing the women of that. And there's there's sexual harassment on that side too.
When you see, you bring up these issues, and it's very easy to take one side in it. But somebody like me who's doing this professionally are always the ones who are saying, let's slow down just a little bit, because we do see when it's abused.
Now,
when
one of the
somebody
things-
is making a false allegation, and we've seen lots of it over the years. That doesn't mean most of it, but we see it often enough to know
So
that
if
it's an
Susie
issue.
walks by you in the office and you say, Susie, you sure look good today. You look nice today.
Depends on how Susie interprets that.
Well,
That's exactly right.
Well, you don't see a lot of cases involving that comment.
Yeah, but let me bring something up in that regard. Now, this is in Russia, but this woman goes out on the train platform, good-looking younger woman, and proceeds to pull her dress up and stand there with her panties showing to make a statement about sexual harassment. Look, there is reasonableness on all sides of this issue. And so one of the problems here is we all want to look better. We pick, men, we pick shirts that look good on us. We wear our jeans this way or that way because we want to look good. Women do the same thing. You can't have it both ways. You can't go around with a skirt with half your butt hanging out and your blouse cut down to your navel and then fuss at someone for turning their head and looking. Now, like Franklin
But
said,
you can
it's all
fuss at
about,
them for reaching over and touching you.
Yeah, that's a
or
completely
making an
right.
inappropriate comment about it.
Well, the comment is where it gets really dicey because part of you wants to go, look, why are you wearing that outfit? Why, and they'll always go, oh, you want me to wear a butt? No, but there's reasonableness everywhere you go. The homosexual community 10 years ago went around wearing blue jeans with clear vinyl backs so their butt cheeks were showing. That's inappropriate dress for a man. There's appropriate and inappropriate, and we've blurred those boundaries over the years. But now we're going to have these ugly arguments over it. It's a real dicey kind of conversation to have.
Well, I just think with the lawsuits that are coming up there.
Well, one of the things that would help
a
that,
human resource department in a large company now, it's a major problem.
Franklin will
it's just
disagree
a major
with this,
problem.
but Great Britain has loser pay laws. I personally have supported loser pay laws for years. And what it means is
you won't have any of our attorneys in America
you
support
file
that.
a
Really,
lawsuit,
frankly.
and if it's a legitimate lawsuit, an attorney will take that case. But if you go to court and you lose, you pay all of the fees. What that does is it puts some responsibility on the person filing the lawsuit. Right now, especially if you're a business owner, and especially under contingency law, basis where a lawyer will take the case and you owe nothing if you lose.
That's right.
They have absolutely nothing to lose, and you as a business owner have everything to lose.
Well, and let's just get to the core of this. If an attorney takes a case in a sexual harassment case and goes after a large company, and it could go back to the owner of the company or someone else because they let it be a freelance place or something, everybody can be tied together into a lawsuit here, and what they're looking for is a settlement.
How do you
So
feel
it'll
about
go
loser
away.
pays laws?
Well, what I see is a situation where most of the time the defendant in the case has vastly more resources than the plaintiff does.
But he also has vastly more risk.
Not always.
No, wait a
All
minute.
right, so under a contingency
Wait a minute.
lawsuit.
Why would you go after a person with more resources?
Because that's who did something wrong.
So you can get some of
Or
those
because
resources.
they want the resources.
They want the resources.
Okay, but I mean, if somebody has been wronged by that person, it's
What if
the
they
only.
haven't been wrong?
Yeah, what if they haven't been wrong?
That's,
What I'm trying to say is
there
charges
are
come
already
up.
rules in place.
Charges come
Hold
up and
on,
settlements are
hold
made.
on. There are already rules in place where courts can order those parties to pay a lot of the cost
The
for the other
damages
party.
are. All right, Franklin, are you
If it
familiar with the chronological list of events in the Dow Corning case for the silicone breast implants?
Mostly.
What happened at the end?
At the end
At
of
the
the
very-
case or of the facts of the case?
At the end of the facts of the case, years later, what happened?
The prevailing weight of medical opinion is that the implants were not a problem.
And what happened to Dow Corning?
It went
It
broke.
went out of business. $400 million business closed. People lost their job. Investors lost all of their investment over nothing.
Okay.
So how do you remedy that damage?
I don't know that you can remedy it. What I do know is that there were medical professionals who were taking the other side of that.
There were professionals on both sides, but who made money off that? All the plaintiffs, but who made the bulk of the money? The attorneys. Because in those class action lawsuits, there was a huge multi-million-dollar class action lawsuit down in Alabama and Mississippi. The plaintiffs, the people in the case, ended up getting, I think, less than $2 apiece. The law firm, $34 million.
That's what a class action lawsuit is. It's a lawsuit for the attorney firm.
A couple of lawyers made millions of dollars, and even the aggrieved only got $2.
Is that not the case in most of those type lawsuits?
Not necessarily.
Well, tell me one where the parties have made more money.
There
Lots of money.
are tons of those cases, though, where the facts are such that nobody could ever pursue them individually. So you'll have a lot of cases. For example, there was a case against American Honda a few years ago that turns out that they had tacked on to almost all of their car purchases something like $45 that was not disclosed in the financing documents to these people. And it affected a couple of 100,000 people. Okay. Well, none of those people could have done anything to get that $45 back. And that class action lawsuit, though, but when you added it up, it was many millions of dollars for that company.
But did the individuals get $45 back?
They got $20 back or something like that. I don't know. I didn't see
millions.
But I didn't see it. But the point I'm making
I bet they
is
didn't get over $6 back.
the point I'm making is, what would be your remedy for,
Well, now, look,
for
Franklin's
how
right.
how you stop somebody like that? Now, I will give you the counter argument to this.
Which is
that I
Dow
would say,
Corning.
well, no, that's not what I was going to say. I was going to say, why is that an issue? Because Congress and those people have decided not to provide any kind of enforcement mechanism statutorily for the government to take. And so they've created, and there are lots of areas like this in the law, where rather than doing something about it, they've left a civil remedy available and assumed that that will police the issue.
Well, that's because activist government people then abuse regulatory authority. There's abuse everywhere in this. But frankly, let me ask you a question. What do you agree that if, especially on a contingency basis, that the plaintiff, let's assume the plaintiff is actually bringing a case that's a malfeasance case. You know, they're actually, there wasn't a violation.
Johnson baby powder.
What do they have to lose? What does the plaintiff have to lose in a contingency basis lawsuit?
Well, I would argue that the person who's got something really to lose is the attorney who foolishly takes that case.
Well, that's true because the attorney goes into it and does have to expend resources. But my point is, what does the plaintiff have to lose?
Nothing.
Depends on what their losses actually are, John.
I'm saying if you have someone with ill intent, that there wasn't an actual...
Okay, John, I'm sure there are.
What do they have to lose?
Arguably nothing.
Nothing. But the person being sued, the innocent in this case, if we assume that it's a malignant claim, what do they have to lose?
Everything.
Always. They always have something to lose. Whether they're guilty or innocent, they lose. Guilty or innocent, they lose.
John, these lawsuits run up so much. Wait a minute, listen, in the bills it takes to defend it, there are so many cases, they just settle it.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
They just settle it so
especially
they
in the
can move
medical
on with
field.
life.
That's a myth, at least in this state.
It's not a myth for medical and dental people.
Oh, it's a myth for doctors. I'll tell you right now.
It's not a myth.
Here's what I can tell you. And these are facts.
Car accidents.
These are facts. These are facts.
Insurance companies.
Okay. You know, the numbers don't lie. Insurance companies in Tennessee have been enormously profitable.
I didn't say they weren't profitable.
All right, medical malpractice in Tennessee, the primary insurer in Tennessee pays out no more now than they did 15 years ago. The costs aren't going up. Last year in Tennessee, last year in Tennessee.
Who are they giving the cost to?
You know why the payouts are...
It's a good question.
It's coming from us.
You know why the payouts are steady, Franklin? Because they settle most of them.
No,
they don't go to trial.
That's not true either.
Yes, it is.
That's not true either.
Look, as a person who has malpractice insurance, here's how this works. If the insurance company decides that they can settle it cheaper than they can fight it, they will offer to settle it. If I, as the insurance holder, say, I didn't do anything, I'm not going to settle it, they'll tell me, fine, but we're not on the hook for anything above what our settlement offer was.
That's not true in Tennessee.
Let's take a call. Go ahead, caller, you're live.
Yeah, I'd just like to go back to some of the things y'all were talking about earlier. One about the children not being married and having children out of wedlock. A lot of that came from the Murphy Brown era and the Murphy Brown show. That seemed to have made that all right.
What show was that?
Murphy Brown. She had an out-of-wedlock baby. She was a main character, and they celebrated it.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah, they did, and they celebrated it. Hollywood celebrated it, and another problem we're having, a big problem, is we have government control of our schools. If the schools were turned back to the states and we actually had control of our parents, had control of their schools and their children, we'd have a whole lot better world to live in, I think, and maybe less of these problems. And I'd like to say that, Dr. John, it's people should come from far and wide to sit in a semicircle and just listen to you. You're a wealth of information, and we appreciate you.
Yeah, okay.
And,
Wait a minute. You hadn't said anything about Franklin.
well, not so much. I would like to also say that, even though I think Dr. John would have made a good attorney, his dad used to tell me, I hope neither one of my children want to become an attorney. I'll support them if they do, but he had a fear of that, I think, in the back of his mind.
So let me ask you something, caller. You're going back to what I started this conversation with, is a lot of the problems we've got is in the families, in the schools, and also coming from Hollywood.
Yes, it is. And another thing, you got two parents working if you have two parents, which a lot of kids don't, but if you got two, they're both working, and TV seems to and Hollywood seems to take up most of their time. And then the things that they're taught in the schools, it's just major problems for us.
All right. Well, thanks for calling.
Well, thank you. No, I'll see you soon.
See you.
Bye.
Well,
I do think
that's
so.
what I was trying to talk about this morning. I think we've got.
Well, now let me say this. This is not
gross
politi-
negligence.
Well, this is not political, and I don't know how Franklin will feel about this. I personally not sure you're going to fix this unless we have a spiritual revival like we had in the early 1800s, where people get back to church, they get back to God, they have some belief in something beyond themselves, and they start treating their neighbors like Jesus taught us to.
There is a lot of evil in America right now.
Well, there's wait a
lot
minute.
of evil.
There's a
lot of
battle
evil.
between good and evil since the beginning of time.
But there's a lot of evil in America.
There's
right
always
now.
evil. Evil ebbs and flows depending on what the culture does.
Lots of evil around right now. A lot of evil. I'm going to change the subject. This was something interesting I was reading. The Japanese company offers extra days off to workers who don't smoke.
I'm sure they'll be sued soon by the smokers.
Well, the smokers were trying to protest it, but they're figuring that they would reward the non-smokers with an additional 6 vacation days per year.
Well, I will
if
tell
they
you,
did not
and I
smoke.
tell my patients this, and this is old data. There was a study out of Germany. People that smoke, on average, they miss about a week more work per year. They spend more money at the doctor because they get the cold and flu more often. They buy more clothes than non-smokers do because the cigarettes apparently degrade the fabrics and the clothes. There's multiple costs associated with this. It's just a stupid decision.
And the numbers came out just a week or so ago. Tennessee retains one of the highest smoking rates in the country.
That's true.
Amazing. I mean, I've smoked and I've been hooked more than once, and I've got off of them. But
Well, keep in mind,
I'm off of them, been off of them. I won't be back on them.
Laboratory rats were put in a cage. They had a dish of food, they had a dish of cocaine, and they had a dish of nicotine. They ate the nicotine until they died. More addictive than cocaine.
I don't know what it says, but I suspect it says something, though. The southern states
Dip
have by
is actually
far
the most,
the highest tobacco use.
and dip is the most addictive form. It's more addictive than cigarettes.
Hey, what happened to Senator Ron Paul? His neighbor attacked him and broke 5
You mean the
ribs.
socialist, Democrat registered Bernie Sanders supporting neighbor?
Yes, that was our doctor.
Yes, they both were. They both actually worked in the same hospital, from what I understand.
So they haven't released all the details, but apparently they've had although they've been friendly, I guess, they had a long-standing dispute over something in their neighborhood.
All right, so here's I'm going to try to give
not a political dispute. It's
I'm going
a
to try to
neighbor
give a fair balance. It seems ridiculous that this would be over political. However, the lawyers involved on the perpetrator's side have a vested interest in saying it's not political, because if it's political, then it's a class A felony for attacking a United States senator.
Senator Paul's folks are perfectly free to make any statement they want, and they've chosen
They've
not to.
had
thus
multiple
far.
arguments over
Yard
political-
clippings.
Well, they've had arguments over political things too. But Paul's office surprisingly downplayed the whole thing. They said he had minor injuries. He had 4 broken ribs. He couldn't
5
breathe.
broken ribs.
5 couldn't
And
breathe.
3 of
He
them
had
were displaced
lung
fractures.
contusions.
Yeah, it was a bad
and His
injury.
face was apparently damaged and cut.
Yeah.
And I don't know why they downplayed the damage.
Yeah, it's a mystery.
Anthony Weiner set for prison. I think he left Monday.
Will
for
his prison have tennis courts?
Federal Medical Center in Massachusetts
So
to
it'll have
serve
tennis courts.
21-month sentence for illicit online contact with a 15-year-old girl. You know, I know that he was scared to death to go to a regular prison. It came out he was scared to death to go to a regular prison because he would be
bait.
Basically.
Well, let me say something.
So they've got him
The
into a federal medical center in Massachusetts.
Why?
The federal classification system for that has more to do with the length of the sentence that you receive. And if you're below a certain level, it's presumed that you're going into a minimum security facility. If you're above a certain level, it's virtually likely that you'll go into a more hardened prison. That's just the way they do it. It may produce a result that nobody really likes, like in this case, but overall, that's the way they do it.
You know the result that it produced that I just love? I mean, this guy did something good. Do you know that, John?
Weiner.
Anthony Weiner ended up doing something good.
What's that?
If it hadn't been for him, the Democrat Hillary Clinton's bid at the White House, the FBI Director James Comey announced in late October 2016 he was reopening the probe of Clinton's use in the private computer server email
Trump
between
hasn't
Clinton
pardoned
and
him.
Weiner's wife. In other words, that's where they found some of Hillary's hidden emails in his computer.
That is true. But
So that's the only good thing.
well, let
came
me
out of
say
that.
something. I don't know whether Franklin will agree or not, but one of the things we talk about is the disparate situation with white collar crime and blue collar crime and cocaine versus crack. Personally, I think if you put some of these white collar, criminals in a regular prison, you'd make a huge impact in white collar crime.
I bet you're exactly right. It would change things.
Now, I understand in a way you don't want someone like Weiner, which was a nonviolent crime, to end up being murdered in his jail cell.
Right.
But I don't think they ought to. They do. They look like country clubs. There's one down here in Alabama that a lot of them get sent to. And it looks like a damn country club. Shouldn't be that.
They paint a lot down there.
I think they ought to maybe go in the county jail. If you set them in some county jails with the drunks and the, drug addicts, I think you might have some
We're
of these.
about to run out of time, and Franklin's waiting for me to bring this up. The elections in Virginia. You want to talk about them real quick?
Well,
Republican-
the polls proved to be more accurate than
They did.
in the Trump election. They pretty much followed what they expected, what the polls had shown fairly consistently till the last few days anyway.
Hillary carried the state by about 5, and Northam carried.
This is not a shot at the Republicans, what I'm about to say, but what was interesting is that 4 out of 10 Virginians who voted in that election said that health care was their number one issue on it. And I think you could at least make an argument that the inability to do something on the federal level burned Republicans in that
Well, the
particular
Republicans hurt
race.
themselves, but a 13-term incumbent who called himself Virginia's chief
Homophobe.
Also lost.
Also lost
To a
over a bathroom
transgender
bill.
candidate.
He should have lost, not
Over a
for.
bathroom
He should have
bill.
lost for being stupid.
Well, you know who he lost to?
A transgender.
Yeah.
Danica. D-A-N-I-C-A.
But now, when
Well,
you divide that out, though, Northern Virginia voted very differently from most of the rest of Virginia. Northern Virginia has 4 or 5 of the wealthiest counties in the country.
More happened than that, though. In the is it the House of Delegates? Is that what they call it in Virginia?
They picked up.
Okay.
4, I think
Well,
4
the
seats.
Republicans lost a supermajority in that, so that, and then also in Maine, against the wishes of the Republican governor, the voters voted to adopt the Medicaid expansion. So it's really interesting what's going on right now.
I don't know what's going to happen with health care. What's going on with
Well,
Obamacare
I would like to.
It's failing.
I would. Well, except that they had the biggest enrollment day in their history yesterday.
But it's failing. Their numbers are significantly below where they thought they'd be.
Look, if the Republicans would simply stop with the repeal thing and say, let's see if we can fix it.
You can't fix
You
it.
can't fix something that you're giving
You
away.
can't fix it.
Let me say something.
By the way, there's
How can you guarantee an insurance company money? How can that happen? How could you possibly guarantee
I
an
believe
insurance
that's called
company?
corporate welfare, isn't it, Franklin?
In this
By the
case,
way-
though, it means that the hospitals are able to stay in business.
Well, the
By the way,
hospitals would stay in business if they would lower their prices and sell it for a fair
Well,
price.
that wouldn't be the case for rural hospitals.
By the way, an Ontario doctor from the Canadian system says that the health care for one of her patients is going to have to wait 4.5 years to see a neurologist under socialized medicine.
And also, we've got to go, but the VA hospital system's still broke, sounds like. All right, folks, we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in. This is Backfire. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Backfire,